This football season is interesting for people like you and me. You're
Yeah.
not really able to really until the playoffs of this year kind of enjoy football the way everyone else enjoys football.
Yes.
So it is nice to kind of take a few weeks afterwards and actually watch some games just for your own enjoyment. Sad that came to an end, but it was a good playoffs. It was a fun playoffs. And that was as good a game as you could hope for to end it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really was. I mean, I think going into that, everybody was just like, I don't care who wins. At least my thought was like, I like Jalen Hurts. I like Patrick Mahomes. I like Andy Reid. I like the Kelsey brothers. Don't really care who wins. I just want a good game. Obviously, we both had, some bets in there, so you were leaning one way or another. But overall, it was good. But you're right. Like, to watch the playoffs is just like so cool. Like my family, sometimes they get it to a degree, but I don't think they really understand like that first Saturday after the Steelers season ends, which I don't want the Steelers season to end. Like, I would love to be in Arizona and continue to cover this team. And that would be a magical ride on its own. And we would be very blessed to be able to be part of that. But once that season ends and you get to sit there on your couch Saturday morning and like turn on Countdown and then, just enjoy a day of football. You're right. You're right. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year, and the playoffs itself is one of my favorite times of the year. It is sad to see it go. It was a good game. The Kansas City Chiefs walked away victorious. Thought it was going to be the end of Andy Reid. He said no, he thinks he's coming back. I don't think any Steelers fans really care about that outside of the fact that they got to play Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid again this season, which is never an easy task for anybody in the AFC. What they do care about, JuJu Smith-Schuster. Big moment before the game, big moment at the end of the game. We'll start with his entrance. Showed up in a kilt. People were not having the kilt whatsoever. I'm going to ask your opinion on it, but I'm just going to say nobody. I think my first thought was nobody on his fashion team was like, dude, it's green and you're playing the Eagles. Yeah. Maybe it shouldn't be green. What were your thoughts on the kilt?
Yeah. Like some of these guys, stylists, are just stealing money for him. Like just from him. Like this is, I don't know. I'm not universally opposed to kilts, but man, this one, I don't know. This just wasn't it.
It was bad.
And I don't know. I think about the green when you're facing the Eagles, but I just didn't like it. I felt like, I don't know. It felt over the top for over the top's sake, not, over the top because it actually looks good or anything like that.
Yes. Did you see him like walking in? Did you see the video of him walking? It looks like he's got like a full lean going. Like, you know what I mean? It's like you're struggling to pick those feet up as you move in those giant boots. Yeah, I don't know. Like in today's style, especially with athletes, like there was a time where I remember being in college actually, and I wrote like how nerds are taking over sports, and it was about like how everybody was wearing the fake glasses and, you know what I mean, dressing with the buttons all the way up, and the beginning of the change it was. And I thought that was like super cool. And to see where we are today with like Kyle Kuzma showing up in an airbag and JuJu showing up in a kilt, it's just, I don't know. Fashion is fashion, man. I'll never understand it. I wear a hoodie to every single one of these podcasts. I own 4 hats. I'm just not the same, I guess. I also don't have NFL player or NBA player money, but you're right. Like there's just,
well, like
who says that? Who says, yeah, do that?
My thing is that even if I did have NBA or NFL player money, I'd still want to feel like confident in what I was wearing. And I don't know if I would have felt that way in a Kyle Kuzma sweater or definitely not a JuJu Smith-Schuster kilt.
No.
Like I don't like if I was him, I'm sprinting from the bus or with my car or whatever to the locker room. I don't want like I would not feel good about, but maybe JuJu does. I'm not sure, but man, it's one of the biggest days of my life. I want to show up like not having to worry about anything else. And I would just not, I'm not the type of person who would be able to.
No. And like you see, there's some guys that show up like decked to the nines. And I'm like, yeah, that's a flashy outfit. You're looking good. And then there's just some people I'm just like, why bring that attention to yourself? I'm all about that life. Do it without looking ridiculous, right. And JuJu, he did. He looked a little ridiculous, but I mean, that's what, people are into that. I don't know. The real question is, will he ever wear that again? Like, will JuJu ever just go out in public in a kilt?
Well, he might wear a kilt again, but he's not going to wear that same kilt.
Like,
no, I don't think that's what they
what
do.
You think
I
that
feel like this is like
that
a
was
one-off
designer.
Yeah, Yeah, but like this feels like a one-off. Like this feels like the type of thing where a stylist picked it out for him and said, and Juju is borrowing that outfit. That is not something that is a staple of
Oh, very
Juju's
true.
closet. Yeah.
Very true. He does not own that after tonight. Yeah, very true. Very true. It's like the red carpet of the NFL, I guess, would be
Right.
those walk-ins. Yeah, I guess that's true. But that even brings up like a different, could you imagine Juju walking in and that stylist being like, hey, man, we got this for you. Pulls out a kilt and he's just like, let's rock it. That hat, put it right on my head. 100, those giant boots, let's rock them. It's just, I don't know, man. Question marks. Then at the end of the game, Juju's involved in the most controversial call of the game. It's the perfect game going into the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. Like, this is exactly what everybody wanted. Bring it down. At that moment, you were looking, okay, the Chiefs are going to kick a field goal. Jalen Hurts is going to have his opportunity to beat Patrick Mahomes in a 2-minute drill to go win the Super Bowl. Like, this is what it's all about. This is what the NFL is. Then there's a whole defensive holding call against not against JuJu Smith-Schuster, against James Bradberry, who was covering JuJu Smith-Schuster. Super controversial. Did you think it was a holding call? I mean, both of them admitted it. Juju said yes, 100%, and then James Bradberry said, "Yeah, I did grab it. I was just hoping that they didn't give it to him." I don't think there's a question on whether or not there was a little bit of a grab. I think the bigger question is that just too soft of a call to make in that moment in the Super Bowl?
Right. I think that's the crux of it. It's not whether or not by the law James Bradberry held JuJu Smith-Schuster. It's you have a Super Bowl on the line, essentially.
Yep.
Well, not essentially on the line, but it's there was still some football left to play, but it was a decisive play in the game. It was again a great game up to that point. I just don't like putting that in the hands of the like it didn't alter Juju's route at all. The ball was way overthrown. He probably wasn't going to catch it anyway. I don't understand making that call in that moment. And I think you gave into like Patrick Mahomes was throwing that ball just to bring attention to the holding. He wasn't throwing that to try to complete a play. And I don't love rewarding that, especially in that moment. In a game that had so many other key plays to it, why you would it was a choice to decide the game that way. It was plain and simple. It was a choice on a holding penalty. And it's really hard to there's a million other plays that you can point to say, well, if this had gone differently, that would, the game would have ended differently. But I don't know, you can't ignore the timing. It's just really hard to get around the fact that it was, a soft call at the most important moment in the game.
Yeah, it was, I think the biggest thing, it was like I agree 100% with what you just said. In my head, first off, I was real pissed about that because I had money on the Eagles. I was like, let's go. Philly's about to win this. I was feeling so good all night. And then to have it end there was ridiculous. It's another year of the refs decided a huge game. How many times can this happen before you're just like, okay, let's, I don't know if you could get rid of the refs, but I'm pretty positive that you could get rid of most of them and get rid of most of what they do. And I don't think it's really a question anymore about whether or not that should happen. At this point, I'm just like, okay, there's just no need for you guys out on the field. You do more damage than you do good. I think the biggest thing is this. There's so much talk right now about, and I get that it's all memes and it's all jokes, but there's so much talk right now about the NFL being rigged. You couldn't have that happen if you were the NFL. You couldn't have a call that was that big in that moment say, okay, this is how this game is decided, because now you're going to get a ton of people, because I'm in group chats with buddies back home who constantly are like, dude, the NFL's rigged. The NFL's rigged. And they genuinely mean it. They're fully convinced that the NFL is rigged. And if I wasn't involved in the NFL, I would think the same thing. You're going to have so many people who are now running with these memes and saying dude, did you not watch the Super Bowl? That's such a bogus call. And then they're going to start putting the pieces together. And I don't know. I just think that it's it was so good up until that point, except for that weird challenging Dallas Goedert's catch that 3 plays later, which I didn't understand at all. You literally snapped the ball twice. How did you have that much time to chat? Why were you able to challenge a play again? But even that one didn't turn out, in anybody's favor because they upheld it, which I thought was good. If they changed that, then I thought, oh, this is huge.
Right.
But to have that moment where you're just like, okay, like all week long, nobody's going to be talking about how Patrick Mahomes had a comeback and won this game, or how him and Andy Reid won a second Super Bowl, or how good Jalen Hurts was in that game. Everybody's going to be talking about, like, was that a holding call? And was it too soft? And should that have been made? And it's another year where the refs take center stage in these big games. And it's not always the Super Bowl, but it seems every year in the playoffs, there's just something. I don't know. It was a bad call. In my opinion, I'm not throwing the flag there. And I think that it puts a really bad light on the NFL.
Yeah. And I wouldn't either. And I don't like, I don't know. Should have been decided by the players. Like, there was still a drive to go. The Chiefs were going to kick a field goal anyway. And I would have just rather that game have been decided by the Eagles offense versus the Chiefs defense. I just would have rather, and then, in all likelihood, the Eagles just get a field goal, and then we get overtime and we get a more real.
Yes. And that's what you want. That's what you want. Right. Like, in this game, that's what you want. You want the most dramatic ending possible. And instead, I mean, at least in my house, I was the only one sitting in front of the TV at the end of that game. Everybody else was up walking around because they already knew it was over. Like, they already knew that game ended. Like, you don't want that, you don't want all these people to be like, oh, well, that's super disappointing. Like, and that's all they're going to talk about all week long is how disappointing. That's the conversation. You know what I mean? All these people went into work today, and me and you jumped on here. We're not talking about anything else except for this call. And that's how everybody else is going to start the conversation too. It's be like, oh, do you think that was a real call? I think it was a good one, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know, bad light for the NFL. I don't know if they ever change it. I think, but most of them you could kind of look at and say, like, okay, it was still dramatic. The ending was still crazy. Like, whatever. In this one, it turned an electric game into the most boring Super Bowl outcome in a while. And I just think I was got to be pissed.
Yeah, it was just anticlimactic, not the ending that game deserved. And yeah, it was just, I don't know. It was really disappointing, I think, to kind of have it end that way. Bad call. And just, not what that game deserved at all.
No. Do you think that it leads to any change? Like, do you think that at any point, I don't know what the change could be. I know that there are ways. I've had conversations with people high up who have talked about how there are ways to eliminate a lot of what the refs do. Do you think that, that at any moment, do you think that this maybe sparks a conversation where it's like, okay, we actually do have to consider real change here?
Well, I think it's got to start with some kind of accountability for the refs. And I know that's like kind of a tired phrase, but like you have Roger Goodell coming out and saying that the officiating has never been better in the NFL. That's just
protect your own
lie.
Protect the shield.
A plain lie. And it's and I understand what he's doing, but it's, if you want this to get, like, you have to acknowledge that a problem exists first of all before you can even start to address it. And we're still a long way from even acknowledging that. Well, not we, the kind of
the league,
like football,
the guy who's in charge,
right? The people who can actually do something about it are a long way from even acknowledging that there is something wrong with how they are officiating the game.
Yeah, it stinks. It stinks because that's just it's like everything. It's like everything with a governing board. You don't get to make any of the calls, even when you know how bad it is and how it needs to be fixed. And in this instance, you have a majority of the fan base who's going to sit here all week long and talk about how it's the refs got to go. Like, I don't know anybody who's sitting around rooting for the refs these days. Very few people, if anything.